when the lifeless body of actor Yu Menglong was discovered outside a luxury apartment tower in Beijing. Officials wasted no time stamping the case as a tragic accident. Too much alcohol, a fall from a window, nothing more. Case closed. But the silence that followed spoke louder than the words issued by police. Whispers erupted almost instantly. A final text about dirty money. Autopsy leaks claiming he was already dead before he fell. Missing surveillance footage that should have told the full story. And even talk of a forbidden video showing him humiliated by powerful figures. Could an entire scandal have been buried before the public ever saw the truth? Tonight, we dive into the theories, the suppressed details, and the conspiracy that refuses to die. This is Criminal Tracks. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear may change the way you see his final hours forever. On September 11th, 2025, one of the most unsettling stories in Chinese entertainment began to unfold in the quiet hours of the night. Actor Yu Menglong, just 37 years old and still in the prime of his career, was found lifeless outside Sunshine Upper East, a luxury residential complex in Beijing's Chaoyang district. The first reports trickled out through whispers online before being confirmed by his studio. By then, the public mood had already shifted from disbelief to devastation. Here was a man known for his charm, his steady rise in dramas and music, suddenly gone in a way that seemed far too abrupt to accept. Authorities wasted no time presenting their version of events. Police announced that Yu had been drinking heavily with friends earlier that evening. After dinner, he retreated to a bedroom in the apartment and locked the door. Hours later, his body was discovered below the building. Investigators pointed to a damaged or loose window mesh as the likely path of his fall. They concluded that it was an accident, a tragic misstep brought on by alcohol. With that, the official narrative was set in stone. No foul play, no lingering questions, nothing more than a heartbreaking loss. The police statement was brief but definitive. It emphasized that there was no criminal suspicion. Yu's management echoed this message, urging the public to mourn respectfully and avoid speculation. The most poignant response came from his mother, who released an open statement that carried the raw voice of a grieving parent. She pleaded with the public to stop spreading false stories. She insisted that her son's death was accidental, the result of drinking too much, and urged people to let him rest in peace. Her words were intended to end the discussion, to wrap the tragedy in finality. But in today's hyper-connected world, finality is hard to achieve. Even as the official explanation circulated, the absence of detail struck many as suspicious. The public was told only the broad strokes. He drank, he fell, he died. The lack of depth, the speed with which authorities closed the case, and the absence of supporting evidence, such as forensic reports or CCTV footage, left an uneasy void, and voids online are rarely left empty for long. The state moved to reinforce its story, not by offering more clarity, but by tightening the lid. Beijing authorities announced that multiple individuals had been detained for spreading rumors about Yu's death. Platforms began locking searches of his name, flagging posts, and erasing entire discussion threads overnight. Accounts that speculated beyond the official line were silenced. To some observers, this was proof enough that wild gossip needed to be stopped before it caused harm. To others, the censorship itself became a red flag. If there was truly nothing to hide, why erase so much so quickly? Meanwhile, tributes for Yu poured across the internet. Fellow actors and actresses he had worked with wrote heartfelt messages recalling his kindness and professionalism. Fans flooded his official pages with notes of grief, recounting how his performances had shaped their lives and how unthinkable it was to lose him so suddenly. Flowers and memorials appeared outside the complex where he died. The public mourning was widespread and genuine, but it stood in stark contrast to the blunt efficiency of the official closure. While fans cried out for answers, the state was telling them there were none to be found. This tension between emotion and authority only deepened as the days passed. Official outlets repeated the same phrases: an accidental fall, alcohol involved, no evidence of crime. The family remained consistent, echoing the accident explanation. Yet, with every repetition, the story began to feel more like a mantra than a revelation. People were not being given a chance to see evidence, only being told to trust it existed. The result was that the official account, rather than settling the matter, sparked more suspicion. The physical setting of the tragedy added to the intrigue. Sunshine Upper East was not some rundown block, but a modern, high-end complex known for its security and amenities. For Yu to have locked himself in a bedroom only to end up dead below seemed to many an unsatisfying conclusion. Questions multiplied. Why was he alone? Why did no one hear anything? What exactly did the police find inside the room? None of these questions were addressed directly in the official reports, and so speculation filled the gaps. In this environment, Yu's death began to take on two very different faces. In the official story, he was a man who had one drink too many, stepped too close to danger, and paid the price in an unfortunate accident. In the public imagination, he was something else entirely. A star whose life had been cut short under circumstances that demanded closer scrutiny. Every missing fact, every deleted post, every denial from the authorities served only to widen the gulf between the two narratives. By the end of September, the line between fact and rumor was already beginning to blur. The state had framed the death as a closed case. The family supported that framing with pleas for the public to stop speculating. Yet for many, the tragedy of Yu Menglong's fall was not simply in the loss of a beloved actor, but in the silence that seemed to surround it. That silence would prove to be the fuel for the storm of suspicion and conspiracy theories that followed, ensuring that his death would not be remembered as a simple accident, but as a mystery that continues to haunt audiences both in China and beyond. What began as a tragic accident in the eyes of the authorities quickly became something far more explosive in the court of public opinion. As the official explanation was repeated in short, unyielding phrases, online communities started weaving together a very different story. Every gap in the narrative, every piece of missing evidence, and every whisper of insider knowledge became fuel for speculation. Soon, Yu Menglong's death was no longer just a loss for his fans. It was transformed into a labyrinth of theories, leaks, and rumors that painted his final hours as anything but ordinary. One of the first theories to catch fire was the idea of an autopsy leak. Posts appeared on Chinese forums and then spilled onto overseas platforms, claiming that Yu's injuries did not match those of a fall from a high-rise. According to these stories, the wounds were more consistent with deliberate harm, and in some versions, they even hinted at torture. An even darker claim spread that his body had been cut open, not as part of a medical procedure, but as if someone had been searching for something hidden inside him. At the center of this chilling tale was the suggestion that a USB drive or other incriminating item had been retrieved from his remains. No proof was ever shown, yet the sheer shock value of the rumor guaranteed its survival. For those who doubted the police version of events, the idea of a hidden autopsy report felt like a smoking gun. Almost in parallel, speculation turned to the building's surveillance system. Sunshine Upper East is a modern residential complex with cameras in its hallways, entrances, and elevators. Why, people asked, had no footage been released? Surely, the cameras would have captured Yu entering the building, moving through the corridors, or at least the timeline of the evening. Some claimed that video existed, but had been quickly confiscated and erased. Others said there was corridor footage showing multiple individuals with him before his death, or a neighbor's peephole video that briefly circulated online before being scrubbed. The absence of any official release of CCTV or security recordings became its own piece of evidence. For skeptics, it was not silence, but confirmation that something had been hidden. The story gained even more heat when screenshots began circulating of what was claimed to be Yu's final text message. In this alleged farewell, he wrote of dirty money and being manipulated by powerful authorities. The wording was vague enough to allow endless interpretations, which made it even more potent. Did he mean the corrupt backroom deals often whispered about in the entertainment industry? Was he referring to something bigger, perhaps financial networks tied to politics? Or was it nothing more than the frustrated words of a man feeling overwhelmed? Without verification, no one could say for certain. But the supposed text became a rallying point for those convinced that Yu had been silenced rather than simply unlucky. Adding to the unease was a rumor that his mother had vanished after releasing her initial statement. The story spread rapidly on both domestic and foreign platforms, claiming that she had been silenced or pressured into withdrawing from public view. While mainstream outlets continued to cite her earlier plea that the public stop speculating, the lack of any fresh appearances fueled the narrative that she had been forced into silence. In the minds of conspiracy theorists, a grieving mother going quiet was not seen as a natural retreat, but as a sign of coercion. Other theories touched on the wider atmosphere of fear that seemed to hang over the case. Social media posts claimed that more than 100 households in Yu's building suddenly put their apartments up for sale. The explanation offered was that residents no longer felt safe, or that they feared their property values would crash under the weight of scandal. No verified real estate records backed this claim, yet it gained traction because it made emotional sense. If something terrible had happened in the building, of course people would want to leave. The rumor lent a sense of panic to the narrative, suggesting that the incident was not only a personal tragedy, but a contamination that spread to an entire community. Beyond these specific claims, the rumor mill began tying Yu's death to the darker side of the entertainment industry. Online commentators pointed to the long-whispered practice of coercion and exploitation, often referred to as sex-for-roles deals. According to this view, Yu had been caught in the crosshairs of a system that punishes those who refuse to play by its unspoken rules. Posts and articles listed 14 suspicious points, each offered as proof that his death was connected to a larger systemic abuse. In this telling, Yu was not simply a victim of an accident, but a casualty of an industry where power, not talent, determines survival. Perhaps the most sensational rumor of all was the claim that a forbidden video existed, a recording allegedly showing Yu being humiliated by a group of people before his death. The number 11 was repeated again and again, with accounts claiming 11 individuals took turns degrading him. Some versions said the footage had been in the hands of a director who suppressed it, while others insisted it briefly appeared online before being deleted. Whether or not the video ever existed, the rumor itself took on a life of its own. People passed around blurry screenshots and secondhand descriptions, convinced that the truth was out there and had been buried. As the theories multiplied, names of other celebrities began to surface. Gao Taiyu, a co-star and friend, was pulled into the narrative by rumor accounts. He responded forcefully, filing a police report and releasing a lawyer's statement to deny any involvement. Actress Song Yiren, also known as Irain Song, faced similar accusations and likewise announced legal action, reporting the matter to authorities. Even larger stars like Yang Mi and Dilraba found their names trending, not because of accusations, but simply because their tributes to Yu were twisted by gossip into signs of hidden knowledge. None of these links were backed by evidence, but the hunger for recognizable figures to fill the story's empty spaces meant that rumors clung to them regardless of denial. Fringe claims only added more layers of intrigue. Some posts tied Yu's death to political elites, alleging that families with deep connections to the party had pressured the police to close the case quickly. Others pointed to whispers of a hacker collective sitting on documents worth 20 billion yuan, evidence of a financial scandal that Yu had somehow become entangled in. These claims appeared mostly on overseas rumor channels and activist sites, but they spread widely enough to enter the larger conversation. The less information was officially provided, the more fertile the ground became for these kinds of extraordinary allegations. By the end of September, the story had grown far beyond the original tragedy. What had been presented as an accident had now been recast as a mystery with countless versions, each darker than the last. Every missing piece of evidence, every silence from the authorities, and every crackdown on online discussion fed the belief that something far more sinister was at play. In the eyes of many, Yu Menglong's death was not just the end of one man's life, but a signal of how easily truth can be buried when power demands it. Whether the rumors were true or not, they had already achieved something lasting. They turned an accident into a scandal, and a scandal into a cultural earthquake that refused to fade away. As the story expanded beyond the official narrative and the storm of online rumors, Yu Menglong's death began to serve as a lens through which the entertainment industry itself was judged. For many observers, it no longer mattered whether every rumor was true. What mattered was how easily people believed them. That readiness to accept even the most shocking claims spoke volumes about the distrust simmering between the public and the institutions meant to protect truth. Yu's final hours became less about the facts of a single night, and more about the shadows that surround celebrity life in China. At the center of these suspicions was the belief that the industry thrives on secrets. In the weeks after Yu's death, countless essays and forum threads appeared suggesting that he had been trapped in a web of exploitation and silence. Fans pointed to his career trajectory, noting moments when he seemed to step back from the spotlight or choose projects that were beneath his talent. To them, these choices looked like signs of resistance, hints that he had tried to push back against pressures most people could not see. Whether this was fair or not, the public was ready to read his life as a coded warning. The forbidden video rumor crystallized these suspicions into a single symbol: the idea that a recording existed, allegedly showing him degraded by others, was too powerful to ignore. People speculated endlessly about who might have been involved, why it was suppressed, and what it would mean if it ever surfaced. The number 11, repeated so many times it became a fixture in discussions, gave the story a sense of precision that made it feel more real. Even without proof, the rumor became a truth of its own kind, an emotional truth that reinforced the belief that Yu had been destroyed not by chance, but by design. The fallout for other actors was immediate and damaging. Gao Taiyu and Song Yiren were forced to publicly defend themselves against accusations that seemed to come from nowhere. Each denial, each lawyer's statement, only seemed to confirm for some that there was something to hide. The fact that such high-profile names had to involve the police to clear themselves showed just how far the rumor machine had spun out of control. Yang Mi and Dilraba, both of whom had worked with Yu and offered tributes, found themselves caught in the undertow as well. Their popularity made them targets for baseless speculation, their names used as hooks to pull more people into the conspiracy web. The more names were dragged into the storm, the less the discussion was about Yu himself. His death had become a touchstone for larger frustrations, with an industry that appears glamorous but opaque, with an official system that answers questions with silence, and with a society that seems ready to erase uncomfortable details rather than confront them. Fans expressed their grief by demanding explanations, while critics outside China framed the case as another example of censorship tightening around celebrity scandals. In this way, Yu's tragedy was no longer personal, it had become political and cultural. International platforms gave the rumors a second life. Videos and articles in English, often repeating unverified claims without context, spread across YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter. To audiences abroad, the case represented the perfect storm of mystery, celebrity, and secrecy. The absence of reliable information from inside China made every translation of a rumor feel plausible. What began as whispers on Chinese forums became global headlines suggesting cover-ups and conspiracies. The narrative traveled so far from its original source that it was no longer about what happened to Yu Menglong, but about what his death seemed to represent in the imagination of a global audience. As the weeks went by, the divide only widened. On one side stood the official account, unwavering in its insistence that Yu had died in a tragic accident after drinking. On the other stood the public, driven by curiosity, fear, and distrust, spinning an ever-growing web of stories that made his death feel like the opening chapter of a much larger scandal. The truth itself was buried under layers of grief, censorship, speculation, and suspicion. What remained was a scandal that could not be fully erased, because the less people were allowed to know, the more they believed the worst. In the end, Yu Menglong's death became not only the loss of a beloved actor, but a test of credibility for an entire system. The unanswered questions surrounding his fall cast a shadow far larger than the incident itself. Whether he was a victim of accident, conspiracy, or something in between, his name became tied to the suspicion that some truths in the entertainment world will always remain hidden. And for many who followed the story, the most haunting part was not the tragedy of his last hours, but the feeling that the full story was never meant to be told. The official explanation of Yu Menglong's death remains unchanged, but the storm of rumors and the whispers of forbidden evidence continue to shape how the world remembers him. Was it a tragic accident, or was something far darker hidden from view? Until the unanswered questions find real clarity, the mystery of his final hours will never truly fade. On Criminal Tracks, we go beyond the headlines to uncover the secrets others want forgotten. Subscribe today, because the story of Yu Menglong is more than tragedy. It is a scandal that could not be silenced,